Good morning, learners. The puppies are sleeping. Look, I just thought I'd show you. Okay, welcome to session 5 of lesson 19. Let me go ahead and get my camera going here. Zoom in just right so you guys can see. And there we go. Okay, so lesson 5 or session 5, when we do this lesson, I just get you started and then you complete the rest of the pages on your own. So notice that when we get to session 5, it is refining scaled graphs. In other words, you start working on your own and then we figure out what you still need to learn and what we need to fix. So when you get started today, let's go ahead and look at our example. Notice in our example, they do have the word problem on the left and they have a table for us on the right. Let's look at that table. What is it talking about? Right, it's your favorite bike color. The colors that were chosen were blue, green, orange, and red. And here are our votes of 12, 6, 3, and 9. I'm already starting to think in my head, what is a number I can skip count by so that I can say all of these numbers? Let's go ahead and read the word problem now. Sean records his classmates' favorite bike colors in this table. He wants to draw a scaled graph of the data. Now, normally we don't say scaled graph. What have we been calling that? Not a scaled graph, but we've been talking about, when do we use a scale? We use it in a bar graph. Right, a bar graph needs a scale. But before we can start drawing our bar graph, we need to know what the scale is. How can he decide what scale to use? Okay, what kind of scale? Remember, when we're looking at scale, it tells us how to skip count. So let's think about if we use a scale of 2, which means we skip count by 2s, we would say 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. If we try to put these numbers on our scale of 2, a couple of the numbers don't fall on the lines. Why do you think 3 and 9 don't fall on the line? Remember, skip counting by 2, we're counting all of our even numbers, and 3 and 9 are not even. So if we skip count by 2s, we wouldn't say odd numbers, and 3 and 9 are odd. So scale of 2 is not going to work for us today. Like I said, when you get to middle school, you could use this one if you want, because our numbers are a lot more challenging in middle school. Okay, scale of 3. So if I'm skip counting by 3s, I would say 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I notice that when I take my points and I put them on this number line, they all fall on a number that's in my scale. So when I skip count by 3s, I actually say all of these numbers. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, and I could keep going. Okay, so which scale do you think we should use? The scale of 2 or the scale of 3? You're right, the scale of 3. So we'll get started on number 1, and then you'll finish the rest of the pages on your own. Okay, complete the bar graph using the data in Sean's table above. Now remember, when I do my scale, or when I do my graph, I use my little index card here to help remind me what to do. So I'm just going to very quietly work on this. Remember, we practiced that in the last video where I'm going to work, but I'm not going to say anything. And you start working on yours. And if you need to and take a peek at the video to see where I'm at and what I have, you can. Otherwise, see how much you can finish on your own. I'm going to use their picture and I'm going to use my list as my check sheet. I have my title, my labels, and my scale. Now I'm going to put my data in. I'm again going to keep working quietly. If you need to watch, try to think about what I'm doing. Otherwise, try to do it on your own. Okay, does yours look like mine? Notice that I pulled all of the numbers from the table up at the top. Blue had 12, green had 6, orange had 3, and red had 9. Okay, this is a good time to pause the video, and you are going to work on the rest of the pages from 437 all the way to 440. Go ahead and pause the video and come back when you're done, and I'll go over the answers. Okay, so you should have finished your worksheets by now. Let's go ahead and take a look and see how you did. So in number 2, I made sure that I read through my graph using my check sheet. And then I started answering the questions. I noticed that number 2 said, how much more? And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, I have a compare problem, because it said how many more, which is very similar to how much more. So I knew that I was going to be comparing two things, and I always like to draw my bar graphs when I'm comparing two things. So I had to compare February and March, and so I added up February and March. February was 22, March was 6. 22 plus 6 is 28, so my first bar is 28. Then I had to add up November and December, because it said November and December combined. So November was 4, December was 14. 4 plus 14 is 18. Since 18 is a smaller number than 28, I drew a smaller bar. And I knew that since I needed to find out how much more, I'm looking for this dotted section out here. Now remember, I've told you guys you can use either add or subtract. Some people like to start at 18 and count up a number to get to 28. If I'm at 18 and I need to go to 28, I would actually count up by 10, right? Or you could subtract 28 minus 18. Now I just have to count back by 10, so that equals 10. I'm kind of out of space, but there is 10 inches difference. 10 inches. Remember to have inches in there. We don't know naked numbers. Okay, in number 3, we had to do some computation. Which 2 months combined have the same amount of snowfall as January? So they give me 2 months, and I've got to add those together and see if they are the same as January. So before I can get started, I need to know what January is. So I went back up to the table and found out that January is 22. So then I started adding. February and March was 18 plus 6, and that was 24. That's too big. December and March were 14 plus 6, which is 20. That one's too small. November and December were 4 plus 14, which is 18, which is again too small. But I noticed that November and February together were 4 plus 18, which equaled 22. There is the correct answer. Laura chose D as the correct answer. Good job, Laura. She was correct. How did she get that answer? She added November, which was 4, and February, which was 18. 4 plus 18 is 22. Okay. On the back side, notice I had to really look at my graph here. I had to try to figure out what was going on. I didn't see a title. So that made me wonder, why isn't there a title? But I did look at my labels, and I was skip counting by 2s. My scales are 2s. It was kind of confusing to me. I noticed that there's numbers across the bottom, but there were numbers all along the side too. And I got stuck once. I forgot that day 4 is 8. And I was thinking day 4 was 4 because there was a 4. But make sure you're really looking at this very carefully, because even I made a mistake just because there's numbers in both areas. So it's okay if you make mistakes. We go back and fix them. Okay, number 4, tell whether each sentence is true or false. The scale for Jane's bar graph is 2. Is she skip counting by 2s? 2, 4, 6, 8. Yep, she is. True. A good title for Jane's bar graph would be, that's why they didn't have a title. They wanted us to figure it out. Tickets sold for 10 days. Tickets sold for 10 days? I don't think they are showing us 10 days, are they? They show us 1, 2, 3, 4 days. They're not showing us 10 days. And we're not looking at how many were sold for 10 days. We're looking at how many were sold each day. So no, that's not a good title. Tickets sold is good, not the 10 days though. So this part makes it wrong. So false. Jane sold one more ticket on day 2 and day 4 together than on day 1 and day 3 together. Well, I'm going to have to do some math on this, but I'm already thinking there isn't a difference of 1 ticket because we're counting by 2s. So there couldn't be a difference of 1 ticket. But let's double check. Day 2 and day 4 together. Day 2 and day 4 together are 14 because you add 2 days and day 2 and day 4. So I added 6 and 8. Compared to day 1 and day 3. Day 1 and day 3 are also 14 because day 3 is 4 and day 1 is 10. So that's 14. So there's not one more ticket sold. They were actually the same. Notice that they were both 14. So that one's false. Okay, Jane sold 8 fewer tickets on day 2, 3, 4, and 4 combined than on day 1. I think I got this one wrong. I think I thought this one backwards. I did. Now that I've read it a second time, you know how it happens sometimes. You got to go back and reread. Okay, let's figure this out. Jane sold 8 fewer tickets. So she has 8 less tickets on day 2, 3, and 4 combined. Day 2, 3, and 4 combined is 18. Okay, so she sold on day 2, 3, and 4. So 6 plus 4 is 10, plus another 8 is 18. She sold 18 tickets right here. On day 1, she sold 10. Okay, now this is where I got tricked. Jane sold 8 fewer tickets on day 2, 3, and 4. So it's saying she sold less tickets on days 2, 3, and 4. But that's incorrect. She sold 18. On day 1, she sold 8 fewer. So they were kind of tricky on this one. Even I got stuck. It's important to read it twice. This one is false. Okay, and number 5, it asked you what the ticket symbols were, and they were, suppose Jane makes a picture graph of her data. She uses a ticket symbol to represent 2 tickets sold. How many ticket symbols does she draw to show the number of tickets sold on day 1? Yeah, I had to reread that again. Day 1. So on day 1, she sold 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. If this was a picture graph, she would need 5 symbols. Okay, page 440. Okay, again, I had to do some thinking as I was looking at my graph. I took the time to read my graph and notice that soccer balls are 2 goals each. So now let's go ahead and take a look at our choices for number 6. We have to figure out what's true based on the picture graph. In A, the Eagles scored 10 goals. Let's find the Eagles. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That's true. In B, the Lions scored 3 goals. Where's the Lions? They didn't score 3 goals. They have 3 soccer balls, which means they scored 2, 4, 6 goals. So 3 goals is what makes this incorrect. Number C, the Tigers scored as many goals as the Bears and the Lions combined. So I have to put the Bears and the Lions together. Where are Bears and Lions? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Okay, so together they scored 16. How many did the Tigers make? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. They also scored 16. And as many as means the same thing. So yes, that one's true. The Falcons scored 2 more goals than the Eagles. Okay, Falcons, Eagles. Oh, look at that. They have 2 more soccer balls, which means they don't have 2 more goals. They have 4 more goals because 2, 4. The Tigers and Cheetahs scored 20 goals together. Okay, so we've got to count the Tigers and the Cheetahs. Let's count. Count with me. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. They scored 20 altogether. Okay, in number 7, they had you read data for a word problem, and they asked you what would be a good scale for our picture graph or our bar graph. So what I had to do is I had to pull out the data. Snowboard had 20, bobsled had 10, figure skating had 50, and ski jumping had 30. What would be a good skip counting that we could do for the numbers 20, 10, 50, and 30? What do you notice? Do you notice a pattern in these numbers? Yeah, they all have a 0 at the end. If they all have a 0 in at the end, what could we count by? You're right, we can count by tens. Let's practice and see if we say all the numbers. 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Did we say all of the numbers when we counted by tens? We did. So having a scale of 10 would be a good idea. Okay, that is the end of lesson 19 and everything we've learned about graphs, picture graphs, and bar graphs. You guys are marvelous mathematicians.